Good evening, everyone. It's 2 minutes past 6, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Rough Hat Clark Draft EIS and Resource Management Plan Amendment meeting. Thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate having people participate this evening. My name is Emily Capello, and I am a consultant for the BLM, and I'm going to facilitate the meeting tonight. As you'll see, this slide has the agenda for tonight's meeting, starting with an introduction from the BLM field manager, the presentation on the project, a question and answer session, and then verbal comments. Tonight's public meeting will include an introduction by the Las Vegas Field Office Field Manager, Bruce Silito. After introductions, Whitney Worthland, BLM Project Manager, will present on the draft EIS for the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project and provide a short overview of the BLM process. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the project's e-planning website, shared in the chat. Now I'll turn the meeting over to Bruce for a short introduction.
Thank you, Emily. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public meeting for the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project. My name is Bruce Silito. I am the field manager for the BLM Las Vegas Field Office. I appreciate you all joining us tonight. The BLM conducted public scoping for this project in the latter part of 2022. The scoping process initiated the environmental review process required by the National Environmental Policy Act. Now, we are in the 90-day public comment period. Comments provided during this period will be used to further enhance environmental review and analysis. The presentation tonight is intended to inform you of the project details, such as the type of solar facility, location, size, timeline, and to share resource concerns identified during scoping. We will explain the NEPA process and what kind of information will be most helpful for you to provide during this 90-day public comment period. Before we begin with the presentation, I would like to introduce you to the speaker today, Whitney Worthland. Whitney is the BLM project manager for the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project, and she will be providing an overview of the project. Whitney is also joined by other BLM subject matter experts working behind the scenes to help answer your questions later in the meeting. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Emily.
Thank you, Bruce. Tonight's forum will provide opportunities for the public to ask questions and provide public input. For the question and answer portion, written questions can be submitted through the Q&A function throughout the meeting, but will only be answered live during the Q&A portion of the meeting. The BLM is also providing the opportunity after the meeting for public input and questions until April 11th, 2024. Input and questions can be submitted via the Participate Now button on e-planning, emailed to the email address on the screen, or can be provided via mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office. Before including your address, phone number, email address, or other personal identifying information in your comment, you should be aware that your entire comment, including your personal identifying information, may be publicly available at any time. While you can ask that your personal identifying information be withheld from public review, BLM cannot guarantee that they'll be able to do so. Anonymity is not allowed for submissions from organizations or businesses and from individuals identifying themselves as representatives or officials of organizations or businesses. Now I'll hand it over to Whitney.
Thank you, Emily, and good evening, everyone. Tonight's meeting will provide information and an opportunity for verbal comment on the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project. The Notice of Availability for the Draft Environmental Impact Statement and the Draft Resource Management Plan Amendment was published in the Federal Register on January 12, 2024, which began the 90-day public review and comment period, which ends April 11, 2024. The final environmental impact statement is anticipated summer 2024, and publication of a Notice of Availability in the Federal Register will begin the 30-day protest period and the 60-day Governor's Consistency Review. Once completed and protests are responded, a record of decision is anticipated fall 2024. Candela Renewables submitted a right-of-way application for the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project for the construction, operations, maintenance, and eventual decommissioning of the proposed 400-megawatt solar photovoltaic power generating facility with interconnection to the regional transmission system and battery storage of up to 700 megawatts. The project is proposed on approximately 2,433 acres of BLM-administered lands within the Pahrump Valley, southeast of the town of Pahrump and 38 miles northwest of Las Vegas. This acreage includes both the project area as well as the generation tie or gen-tie transmission line to the existing Trout Canyon substation. The map on the screen shows the proposed project as the red triangle in the middle of the map, adjacent to the Clark-Nye County line and south of State Route 160. The proposed gen-tie transmission line for the project, which is shown in green on the map, parallels State Route 160 before turning south to the existing Trout Canyon substation, which is identified as the black square on the map. Existing transmission and infrastructure would then be utilized to transmit the electricity to the grid. The updated plan of development for the proposed project is available at the project webpage, which we'll provide a link for in the chat. Along with the proposed project, the BLM also analyzed alternatives to the action, including the resources integration alternative, or alternative 1, and the no action alternative. Key differences between the proposed action, as described by the applicant's plan of development, and alternative 1 include site preparation methods, vegetation restoration requirements, grading limitations, and other components. The no action alternative was analyzed to consider those impacts to the area if the BLM would not issue a right-of-way grant and the project would not be constructed. Under the no action alternative, the public lands within the project area would continue to be managed consistent with the 1998 Las Vegas Resource Management Plan. We'll provide additional information on the alternatives in the next few slides. The proposed action and alternative 1 share many of the same components. This includes an on-site substation, avoidance of major drainages across the site, wildlife access openings installed in the project fence line, a new left and right turn lanes on State Route 160 for site access, and operations and maintenance areas with buildings, water storage, septic system, material storage, and parking. The map on the screen shows the proposed project components, such as the project fence line, solar panel array areas, generation tie transmission line to the existing Trout Canyon substation, project access roads, conduits for collection of electricity generated, and the on-site substation and operations and maintenance areas. The draft environmental impact statement utilizes various site preparation definitions to analyze potential impacts for this project. In order to consistently analyze the action alternatives, BLM developed a classification system for site preparation, as well as assume the general effects of each method. The various methods include avoidance, where no disturbance would occur, overland travel, in which equipment is minimally driven across the existing topography of the site with no grading, clear and cut or drive and crush, where more intensive travel across the existing topography with no grading, and clear and cut with soil removal, which involves the clearing of vegetation and soil, otherwise known as grading. The photograph on this slide show the various site preparation methods analyzed and how they would be implemented for the project. These photographs are from other solar projects implemented within the BLM Southern Nevada district. The goal of using alternative development methods, such as overland travel and drive and crush, across the site would be to maintain vegetation and existing soil structure anywhere grading is not necessary for construction of facilities. This includes under the solar panel arrays. Use of these methods is expected to retain native vegetation and wildlife habitat, maintain seed banks and biological soil crusts, minimize fugitive dust by maintaining existing soil structure, and has a potential to reduce water needs as there would be less dust control needed. Further proposed action includes site preparation methods like clear and cut and drive and crush, as well as clear and cut with soil removal or grading. Across the development area, including the solar panel arrays, facilities, and laydown areas, approximately 27% would be constructed with grading. Additionally, the project fence side would include wildlife access openings, but they would be installed in a manner that would exclude desert tortoise from the project site for the life of the project. The table on this slide shows various acreages that each site preparation method would be implemented under the proposed action across the site. Avoidance acres include those major drainages excluded from development. For the resources integration alternative, or alternative 1, the BLM developed a life cycle alternative. This means that there are components of the alternative that cover construction, operations and maintenance, and decommissioning. Alternative 1 is the agency preferred alternative. The key components of alternative 1 include limiting grading to 20 to 21.5% of the development area, restoration requirements to ensure 60% of perennial vegetation density in ungraded areas is achieved 2 years post-construction, and an applicant submitted access management plan to be reviewed and approved by the BLM, which describes how site access would be developed and maintained through the life of the project. While desert tortoise reintroduction is not proposed, under this alternative, the wildlife access openings in the project fence line may be adjusted to allow for passive reoccupation of the site by neighboring desert tortoise. This modification would only occur if the vegetation within the project site, post-construction and restoration, would meet desert tortoise habitat requirements as determined by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and BLM. Alternative 1 also includes recommended best management practices specific to the alternative that would further reduce resource impacts. The table on the slide shows the range of acreages between 20 and 21.5% grading for each site preparation method under Alternative 1. Similar to the proposed action, avoidance acres include those major drainages excluded from development. Along with the analysis of the project, the environmental impact statement includes analysis of a resource management plan, or RMP, amendment for the visual resource management class area shown on the map in the purple outline. For the BLM Southern Nevada District, the approved RMP is the 1998 Las Vegas RMP. BLM regulations require that all actions and authorizations conform to the approved RMP. If a specific project cannot be modified sufficiently to conform to the RMP, then the RMP may be amended so that the project can then achieve the required conformance. For this project, the BLM determined a RMP amendment was necessary to address project conformance with the area's Visual Resource Management, or VRM, classification, which was designated as VRM Class 3. The RMP amendment would modify the Visual Resource Management classification of the project area from Class 3 to Class 4. The project would be compatible with VRM Class 4 management objectives and therefore in conformance with the RMP. The BLM analyzed a total RMP amendment area of 9,960 acres, which includes an area larger than just the project itself and includes portions of the constructed Yellow Pine Solar Project and the proposed Copper Rays and Mosey Solar projects. The next few slides provide a summary of resource impacts from the project and resource management plan amendment. Issues and resource concerns analyzed were identified during the scoping period and the input period for the variance process, as well as review of the proposed project by the BLM interdisciplinary team. Design features and mitigation measures specific to the project to reduce potential impacts were incorporated into the analysis, and a full description and are fully described in Appendix B of the draft environmental impact statement. The full detailed analysis for the project and resource management plan amendment is described in the draft environmental impact statement, which is available at the project webpage at the link in the chat. Additionally, there are hard copies of the draft environmental impact statement available in Pahrump, Tacoma, and Las Vegas. We'll provide the location of those documents in the chat. The map on the slide shows the analysis area for air quality, which includes the Pahrump Valley Hydrographic Basin and proposed or constructed solar projects, which are shown in gray. BLM utilized air quality modeling to evaluate potential impacts from the project. The air quality modeling report can be found at the project website. It is anticipated that the project would generate air pollutant emissions primarily from equipment utilized during construction, vehicle use traveling to and from the site during the life of the project, and potential fugitive dust from ground disturbance. With implementation of mitigation measures and design features, such as increased dust monitoring and response, the project individually would not exceed ambient air quality standards at the state and national level. Overall, the project has the potential to offset up to 11.9 million metric tons of carbon dioxide by generating renewable energy. A cultural resources report was completed for the project to determine the presence of and potential impacts to historic properties. The report has been reviewed and BLM has provided initial site eligibility recommendations as well as the report to the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office for their review. Consultation with the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office is ongoing. BLM completed a visual, auditory, and atmospheric analysis for the historic properties, which examines how they may be impacted by changes to the environment around those properties from the proposed project. There were no historic properties eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places within the project area. Therefore, there would be no effects to properties within the physical area of potential effect, or APE. The analysis found there would also be no adverse effects to historic properties within the visual, auditory, and atmospheric 5-mile APE. The BLM also examined potential impacts to those resource concerns shared by Indian tribes, which are displayed on the slide. The analysis showed that solar development, including the proposed project, would result in adverse cumulative effects to the resources identified by the tribes. However, mitigation measures and design features were included for the tribal involvement in various phases of the project, as well as the need for cultural sensitivity training for project personnel. A technical drainage study and modeling was completed for the project to determine impacts to surface and groundwater resources from development of the site. BLM also coordinated with the project applicant to understand where water would be sourced for the construction and operations and maintenance. The technical drainage study and water source assessment are available at the project webpage. Project water would come from existing groundwater allocations in the Pahrump Valley subbasin within 5 miles of the project area. The project anticipates use of up to 800 acre-feet of water for construction over 12 to 18 months. The effects analysis demonstrated that this amount of water could result in potential impacts to nearby water well users and other groundwater-dependent ecosystems. Vegetation inventories and survey reports were completed for the site, which included surveys for sensitive plant species and habitat, and the vegetation report is available at the project webpage. Inventories of the site indicated the presence of various species of cacti and yucca, as well as the presence of Joshua trees. There are no sensitive plant species or habitat found within the site. As shown on the slide, the proposed action would result in a higher number, approximately 38% more, of permanent loss of vegetation than alternative 1, based on the increased amount of grading utilized for construction. Both alternatives would avoid 568 acres of vegetation by avoiding major drainages across the site. There's approximately 2.5 miles of existing trail that intersects the project site, which would be closed to secure the solar development area. Based on user data gathered for the area, this trail segment sees relatively low use numbers compared to other trails within the Pahrump Valley. Project fencing and construction would close approximately 2,433 acres of public land to potential dispersed recreation opportunities like hiking and camping. For visual resources, visual simulations were generated from key observation points throughout the valley and nearby topographical features. These simulations were used to determine the level of potential impact from the project. For the project individually, there would be visual impacts to viewers along State Route 160 from some of the proposed facilities, like the on-site substation, that could not be located further from the project boundary along the highway. The visual resources report and simulations are available at the project webpage. A socioeconomic profile was generated to estimate the projected economic output from the project and potential impacts to property values. The BLM utilized census data and other economic factors to determine environmental justice communities that may be disproportionately and adversely impacted by the project. The social cost of carbon was also calculated for the project. Overall, the project economic output is estimated to be up to $276 million in Clark County and up to $12 million in Nye County during construction. These numbers reduced during operations to $11 million and $3 million respectively. The analysis for the social cost of carbon showed that construction of the project would equal approximately $1.8 million based on the generation of greenhouse gases. Conversely, the project is estimated to offset as much as negative $781 million based on the generation of renewable energy to offset greenhouse gas creation from other sources. Adverse impacts to resources in the vicinity of the project area would cause disproportionately and adversely higher impacts to those environmental justice communities within Pahrump and other designated census areas within 6 miles of the project due to proximity. Negative impacts to property values is not anticipated as there are currently no residences within 1 mile of the project. Surveys were conducted for Mojave Desert tortoise and other general wildlife within the project area. Surveys yield 57 desert tortoises distributed uniformly across the site and an estimated 114 desert tortoise within the study area. Desert tortoise within the project would be translocated to the Stump Springs Regional Augmentation Site prior to construction if the project is authorized. The proposed action will result in the loss of 2,433 acres of desert tortoise habitat during the life of the project. Conversely, Alternative 1 will result in potential temporary loss of 2,433 acres of desert tortoise habitat based on the wildlife fencing design to allow passive reoccupation of the project site post-construction and once vegetation is determined acceptable by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and BLM. The project area has the potential to be utilized for migration by threatened and endangered bird species, but there is no suitable habitat present. For special status and general wildlife, the action alternatives would result in the loss of habitat for special status bat species, larger mammals, reptile species, and invertebrates. Both action alternatives would maintain wildlife access to the project post-construction through the installation of wildlife access openings in the fence line. As shown on the slide, the proposed action will result in a higher number, approximately 38% more, of permanent loss of vegetation than Alternative 1, based on the increased amount of grading utilized for construction. Overall, the action alternatives would have a loss of nesting habitat and reduced foraging for bird species, including special status species. Cumulative effects are those impacts on the environment that result from the incremental impact of the project when added to other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions on federal, state, local, or private lands. The map on this slide shows those past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future projects included in the project effects, cumulative effects analysis. The draft environmental impact statement analyzed 2 cumulative effects analysis scenarios. The first scenario analyzed the proposed action and all other solar projects within the Pahrump Valley constructed with similar site preparation methods, such as grading and drive and crush. The second scenario examined cumulative effects from alternative 1 and all other solar projects within the Nevada portion of the Pahrump Valley with similar site preparation methods, which includes grading limitations and overland travel. These scenarios were utilized for alternatives analysis and do not constitute any decision on any future proposed projects. Overall, the cumulative effects of the project and other present and reasonably foreseeable projects would be adverse across a majority of the resources and issues analyzed. Generally, both action alternatives would result in similar cumulative effects. However, as it relates to vegetation, wildlife habitat, and air quality, alternative 1 would have reduced cumulative impacts based on the reduced number of acres for grading. The detailed cumulative effects analysis for all resources and issues analyzed can be found in the draft environmental impact statement. The BLM has been coordinating with Indian tribes and various agencies on the project to gather more information and initiate formal consultation processes. BLM provided invitation to 15 Indian tribes to participate in government-to-government consultation, as well as invited those tribes to participate as cooperating agencies for the project. Tribal consultation is ongoing, and concerns shared with the BLM have been incorporated in the draft environmental impact statement and mitigation measures. Consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has been initiated for the project. BLM also initiated consultation with the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office and is utilizing the NEPA substitution process to comply with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. As part of the Section 106 consultation, BLM coordinated with consulting parties on the project, including the Old Spanish Trail Association and the Pahrump Paiute Tribe. Prior to scoping, the BLM invited federal, state, and local agencies, as well as Indian tribes, to participate as cooperating agencies for the project NEPA process. Of the 26 agencies and 15 tribes invited, 11 agencies accepted cooperating agency status, which are listed on this slide. Input and comments from the cooperating agencies have been incorporated into the draft environmental impact statement documents. More information on consultation and coordination completed for the project is included in Chapter 4 of the draft environmental impact statement. Currently, we're in the public review and comment period for the draft environmental impact statement until April 11th, 2024. The information gathered will be reviewed and substantive comments will be responded to in the final EIS, which is anticipated to be published summer 2024. Some tips for effective commenting related to substantive comments is included on this slide. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Emily, who will begin the question and answer session.
Thank you, Whitney. We will now have the question and answer section on the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project, DEIS, and RMPA. Questions can be submitted using the Q&A box by following the instructions on the slide. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A feature to submit questions. Please understand that some questions will be answered live during this question and answer session, while some may be answered in writing in the Q&A feature. Anyone can see all the questions answered in the chat by clicking on the Show All button. As questions begin to come in, I will facilitate asking the questions as a project manager. Whitney will answer them. Okay, it looks like we have our first question. Let me just confirm Whitney is on. The first question is, how can this project proceed when endangered species will be killed?
So the BLM, in coordination with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, develops extensive mitigation and impact minimization methods in order to protect threatened and endangered species that may be impacted through the project development. Based upon detailed analysis, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service develops a take statement for large projects that serves to limit mortality and to emphasize accountability for direct impacts to threatened and endangered species.
Thank you, Whitney. The next question is, how can biological soil crust be maintained when driven over?
Sure. While impacts to soils will still be adverse under either action alternative, anywhere soils can be left in place and impacted less by construction is expected to retain more soil structure and soil biotic matter, which includes biological soil crusts, more so than grading would. Under the resources integration alternative, soils may recover over the life of the project, which will be facilitated by vegetation being left in place and having a vegetation restoration standard.
Thank you, Whitney. See, we're just getting organized. The next question is, will the VRM class be downgraded on 9,000 acres or just 2,400 acres?
So an amendment to the Las Vegas RMP or Resource Management Plan, as we discussed in the draft environmental impact statement, will be the visual resource management class will be downgraded or modified from class 3 to class 4, which would allow for new landscape modifications to be authorized. And that would potentially attract the attention of casual viewers over 9,960 acres of BLM administered lands within and adjacent to the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project area.
Thank you. People can just be patient. Okay, it looks like the next question is in, and it is, how many tortoise are in the area?
Sure. So surveys yield 52 adult tortoises and 5 juveniles that were observed during the pre-project surveys. Based upon predictive modeling, it is estimated that 113.7 or roughly 114 adult tortoises occupy the project area.
Thank you. While we wait for some additional questions, I did notice that there's an attendee that has their hand up. We will have a public comment period after the Q&A session, but the Q&A session is please using the Q&A feature only. The next question is, buckwheat is a sensitive species.
So there is no Pahrump Valley buckwheat that was identified within the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project area. Pahrump Valley buckwheat was located in the Rough Hat Nye project area. However, that application for that project has been withdrawn by the applicant.
The next question is, what happens if Candela cannot acquire water for construction?
Sure. So if the project is approved, the applicant would be responsible for acquiring the water necessary for construction and operation of the project. If the applicant cannot acquire water for the project, they would be unable to construct the project.
Thank you, Whitney. The next question is, Candela admitted at the meeting that they don't know where they will get 800 acre-feet of water. How will this be resolved?
The applicant has indicated that water will be temporarily leased from an existing allocation for construction. There will be no new withdrawals or allocation of water in the basin due to the project. The applicant is looking at multiple local resources in the basin, but have not yet selected a supplier.
Thank you everyone for your patience. We'll continue answering questions as soon as possible. The next question is, how much noise does access tracking generate?
We would like to have more information on this comment, if you wouldn't mind also submitting it in your comments on the draft EIS, specific to the noise that is generated from the trackers, so we can provide a better answer in the EIS. The issue of noise was not analyzed in detail in the draft environmental impact statement because the BLM utilized the existing analysis in the 2012 solar programmatic environmental impact statement to tier the impacts of this project from.
Thank you, Whitney. Just wanted to remind everybody while we continue to get additional questions and responses organized that if for whatever reason your question isn't answered live, there will be additional responses put in the Q&A feature after this portion of the meeting. The next question is, will 49,000 Mojave yucca be masticated? How many other living organisms will be killed with mastication?
Cacti and yucca salvage is addressed in the site restoration and the revegetation and decommissioning plan. Temporary disturbance areas within the project, which includes laydown areas, polling and tensioning sites, and also staging areas, will have all cacti and yucca salvaged prior to disturbance and then planted back in those areas once construction is complete. Cacti and yucca will not be salvaged from those permanent disturbance areas. So that includes areas that have been graded, such as roads, operations and maintenance buildings, and battery storage sites. As storing cacti and yucca for longer periods of time requires additional disturbance in order to store the plant material. Fees are also paid for the loss of these cacti and yucca. Under alternative 1, most of the cacti and yucca within those areas that would have overland travel would be maintained on the site.
Thank you. The next question is, has the Department of the Interior been included in any of these projects?
So the Rough Hat Solar Project is an applicant-sponsored project. The BLM is responding to the application and has developed an environmental impact statement and a resource management plan to disclose those potential impacts. There are many federal, state, and local agencies, as well as Indian tribes that have assisted with the development of the document. This also includes the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service within the Department of the Interior.
The next question is, has any of the members of the Nye County WARDA Board been included in the studies?
In June of 2022, the BLM invited federal, state, and local agencies to become cooperating agencies for the project. This included Nye County. Nye County is a cooperating agency for the project and has submitted comments on the project, both during the scoping period and then through reviews of the cooperating agency reviews.
The next question is, will 54 Joshua trees be moved or destroyed?
So the BLM has not done analysis to determine what would happen to the individual Joshua trees in the project area. Individual Joshua trees would be salvaged, left in place, or could be impacted by construction, depending if they are in a temporary or a permanent area for construction within the project area. This is described in the site restoration and revegetation plan.
Next question is, will the 2.5 miles of trails closed be rerouted to protect route connectivity?
The development of the solar facility would result in the closure of the 2.5 miles of trails that are currently existing. The draft environmental impact statement did analyze the closure of those trails in the impacts analysis. The BLM has not established a designated recreational staging or any other access points in the project vicinity. Additionally, off-highway vehicle users may access other trails near the site. That includes off of State Route 160, Trout Canyon Road, Tacopa Road, and Old Route 16, which does traverse the valley.
Thank you. The next question is how and when and the date of when this site was selected for this project.
So the applicant identified the site and submitted their application for the project to the BLM on November 14th, 2019.
Thank you everyone for your patience. We continue to get organized for the next question. The next question is, how many yucca will be salvaged?
The precise number of yucca to be salvaged will be determined during construction as the estimates for yucca are extrapolated across the site. Assuming an even distribution or an even dispersal of Mojave yucca across the site, with approximately 24 Mojave yucca per acre and approximately 35 acres of temporary disturbance, that would yield approximately 829 Mojave yucca that could potentially be salvaged during construction. However, this is dependent on the specific locations of temporary disturbance areas, and the density of Mojave yucca are not consistent across the site.
Thank you, Whitney. As a reminder to everybody, if we're not able to get to all the questions during this Q&A session, we will continue to provide answers in the Q&A in writing. The next question is, these projects produce a loud, low hum. Has any follow-up been conducted in areas where clustering is taking place?
Sure. The BLM is not familiar or aware of any type of follow-up for those areas and clustering related to the noise from the trackers. These are really great comments, and we would love to have this information also submitted during the draft environmental impact comment period. So to provide those during email.
The next question is, are you downgrading VRM classes on triple the acres so other projects can move forward?
So the VRM amendment, the area proposed for that amendment also includes land for which there is demonstrated interest in the development of future solar facilities. This includes the constructed Yellow Pine Solar Project, as well as the proposed Copper Rays Solar Project.
The next question is, they told me they do not have permits for water on Tuesday.
So the applicant has indicated they have not yet procured water for the project.
The next question is the Stump Springs ACEC an enclosed area for the tortoise?
So the Stump Springs area of critical environmental concern is designated as a cultural ACEC. The surrounding Stump Springs Regional Augmentation Site has been established as a recipient site for tortoises to be translocated from nearby energy projects. Though the Stump Springs Regional Augmentation Site exhibits desert tortoise fencing along Highway 160 and will have fencing along Tacopa Road to restrict road-related mortality, habitat connectivity would persist through the existing habitat corridors and culverts installed to allow tortoises to safely pass under Highway 160 to the north and east.
Next question is, if Candela has acquired water, why are they not giving details?
As previously mentioned, Candela Renewables has indicated that they have not yet procured water for the project.
Thank you, everyone, for your continued patience. This will be the final question in the question and answer session live, but there you can always ask more questions and responses will be put in writing. There are dozens of projects and each of them create a disturbance to the ecological system on the Mojave Desert and collectively will overwhelm all life in the desert, including humans. The Biden-Harris Green Deal will create severe conditions for residents in Pahrump because there's only one water source from Springs Mountain. What is BLM doing to protect the resources in Basin 162?
So mitigation measures have been identified and addressed as part of the analysis, and those are presented in the draft environmental impact statement, which can be found at the project webpage. In addition to mitigation measures, the Rough Hat Clark Solar Project would be required to adhere to all applicable programmatic design features under the 2012 Solar Programmatic Environmental EIS. Always, please let us know if you have any questions about specific types of mitigation for the project. You can also include that in your comments or any recommendations or suggestions that you can submit during the review of the draft environmental impact statement.
Thank you, Whitney. This concludes the live portion of the question and answer session. We will now transition to the verbal input section. We will not be answering questions live. If you have any additional questions, you can continue to drop them into the Q&A box and we will respond in writing, or you can email and mail any remaining questions to the BLM. As a reminder, anyone can see all the questions answered in the chat using the Show All button. We're going to take verbal input following the order in which people pre-registered and said yes or maybe to wanting to provide public comments. Please use the raised hand feature at the bottom of the screen and the facilitator will open your microphone. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9 and then unmute and mute using *6. You will see a 2-minute timer on the next slide, and this will display the amount of time you have for your public comment. We are reserving 2 minutes per public comment input. Your input will be included in the project public record. After going through the list of people who pre-registered to speak, we'll move on to any who may want to provide input, but who did not pre-register. BLM wants to hear from all the members of the public. However, out of respect for everyone's participation and input, we do ask that you follow these guidelines. Please stay within your allotted time. On the slide, you will see as the time is running out. We ask that you watch this and wrap up your comment. Please be respectful of others that are speaking. Please refrain from profanity. If these guidelines are not followed, your microphone will be muted and we will have to move on to the next person. We'll go ahead and get started. And up first, we have Amy Nelson. It looks like your hand is already raised. We'll unmute your microphone.
Yes, thank you very much for the time. I have to tell you that all of these webinars about these solar projects that BLM host are very frustrating, because we people that are suffering from these projects don't seem to be heard. Our concerns are dismissed and told to go elsewhere, you know, for details, and we just want BLM to stand up and do something before they approve a project that's more substantial, do more to protect the people that live in these areas. There's a reason why Las Vegas is coming across the mountain in Clark County to put them next to our little town. We don't have 20,000 acre feet of water to play with, and they want hundreds of acre feet of water. It's going to make a ghost town out of Pahrump in a very short amount of time. So I just beg BLM to be very cautious and be a little bit more involved in the decision making for the people that live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up would be Rosie Turtle. If Rosie Turtle is on, can you raise your hand? Next up would be Kevin Emmerich. Kevin, can you raise your hand and we'll unmute you?
Yeah, hi, this is Kevin Emmerich. My group's Basin and Range Watch. We can't say a lot here in 2 minutes. But I caught you in a few things here. I didn't realize you're gonna have to retroactively downgrade the visual class for Yellow Pine. You wouldn't do that in spite of several requests from us and other people, but that tells me that Yellow Pine was approved illegally without downgrading the visual class. And instead of trying to do it with this other project, I think the more equitable thing to do would be to open up a resource management plan need for review about that. It wouldn't make a whole lot of difference. You're going to have to do it one way or another, but it does show the public that Yellow Pine was rushed through without adequate thought, and we've seen that in multiple situations with that project. I also would like you to think about how arrogant it sounds when you say property values won't be affected if the project's more than a mile away. The cumulative scenario of all of these projects being built would be, probably what, 30,000 acres, 25,000 acres. I mean, that's going to be visible from space. There's not a lot of people that are going to choose to purchase a property or move to a property when there's such a grim future ahead of that. I mean, that really needs to be considered a lot more in the EIS. That's highly insensitive, and it shows you why there's this big divide and this distrust from local people with BLM. I'm actually not impressed by that at all.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we have Carl van Warmerdam. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. You can speak now.
Yes, with Deep Sea Defenders organization, we're trying to stop deep sea mining, which would be required for the minerals to produce these solar panels. Industrial solar panel farms are a deal with the devil. People who believe solar panels can help solve climate change are misinformed, because the facts are that they will not. The truth, based on facts, will always trump belief. I'm not a climate denier, but you don't have to be a climate denier to know these things are bad and are doomed to failure. And you also don't have to be linked to the fossil fuel industry. Truth be told, most of these rebuildable extractive energy companies have ties to fossil fuels. The devil's in the details. In reality, what's really going on, a boondoggle that you won't hear of in the mainstream corporate media because they only give disinformation, is this. After years of rebuildable energy, solar and wind infrastructure, the world used more fossil fuels in 23 than it did in 22, as it did the year before that and the year before that. We are in fact using more fossil fuels than ever before. From 61,000 terawatt hours of primary energy consumption in 1973, which was the year of the OPEC oil embargo, when the federal government began to massively support research and development in wind and solar panels, to 136,000 today, well over twice as much. In that same period of time, emissions went from 17 billion metric tons of CO2 emissions to 37 billion metric tons today, a 20 billion metric ton increase in the last 50 years. Why? Because these energy intense technologies require massive amounts of fossil fuel to produce, and those emissions are added onto what is already being used, not subtracting, thus
Thank you.
spewing more planet heating.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your 2 minutes have passed, but we will allow for a second comment if there is time after everyone else has had a chance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Michael Fender. If you raise your hand, oh, there you are. We can unmute you.
How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
Got me, huh? Very good. I have lots to say, and I understand all about what everybody else is saying because I'm highly involved in watching what's going on in our community. So I want to deal with the whole solar farm issue along Tacoma Road and all the way going into California. We're talking about basically 7 solar farms. And quite honestly, if they were all to be built, that's roughly about 19,000 acres, not including the 2 or 3 that would take place in California, just on Tacoma Road, just the other side of the state line. And that's an additional, 9,000 acres. So overall, I don't understand why there. The variance zones created through the BLM and the Department of Energy in the first draft of the PEIS in 2007 says there's 9 million acres. And you just told me today that this evening that this particular project, these contractors acquired this land in 2014. Well, that means it went on the market basically a couple of years before that and was put on a list. Well, quite honestly, I can understand why, because there wasn't too many people living here at a certain time frame. But the whole project overall is too close to home. It's right along the highway. And we all know what's going to happen here. Like the gentleman says, living here, I don't want to have to lose my home because of all these. So I don't want to see any of these built this close to a neighborhood. It just doesn't make sense, except for the people that are doing it because they got great deals on loans and they only have to pay 55 cents on the dollar for taxes. And that's really not fair to us, the people that live in this valley. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your comment. Next up, we have Richard Ambry. If you're here, can you raise your hand and we'll unmute you? Next up would be Dale Wysocki. Apologies if I completely butchered your last name. Please raise your hand if you're here and would like to speak. Next up, we have Bernard Hosking. Next, we have Benjamin Dale. Is Benjamin Dale here? Please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Next, we have Robert Adams, and I see you have your hand raised already, so we'll go ahead and unmute you. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I don't see the timer going. Did I unmute?
You did, yes.
Okay, there it goes. All right, thank you. I agree with some of the previous speakers that there's really not enough weight to the input of the people that are most impacted. And that's residents of Pahrump. And 1 mile radius is too short as far as the impact of these. And it's something that really bothered me. And I see the brochures that are put out by the developers and such, and it shows solar panels that go across the entire horizon. That's not the way to do it. They're mighty proud of, pretty much covering over the natural environment. Let's protect nature. And maybe a good way to do this would be is instead of having them just spread out forever, is to just have them in clusters. Disperse them. In other words, we look first to avoidance, and then we look for mitigation, and then we look for planning. And I think that was the second speaker, that let's plan these so they're at least the least intrusive. And let's plan them in such a way that there's room between them so they don't block access to the public land beyond. So people don't have to drive miles to get around them. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next would be Joseph Helasek. Are you here? Can you raise your hand and we'll unmute you? Joyce Berishman, are you here? Tony H, I see that you have your hand raised. We'll unmute you. Should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. As you stated, my name's Tony. I live in southern Pahrump, and I'm an avid hiker, a bike rider in the proposed construction area. And I've regularly seen, excuse me, cougars, coyotes, tortoises, and the animals and plants they feed on. I love solar power. Bet you didn't expect anyone to say that tonight. I have over 40 panels on my roof, and I pay for electricity only 3 months out of the year. I've been driving Tesla since 2016. Everybody's rolling their eyes right now. Several of my neighbors on the street have the same story, and I do believe climate change is real ever since Exxon's 1982 memo. But the number, type, and concentration of solar farms proposed is a straight up ecological catastrophe. And I'm making this assessment based on the materials and studies that you provided at the meeting in Pahrump a couple nights ago. You're planning on destroying one of the most fragile ecosystems in the country. You plan on displacing and killing scores of endangered species, both plant and animal. And you're going to use millions of gallons of water from an aquifer that literally is not being replenished at the rate it should be. It's a big planet. It's a big state. There's no reason to build it here. Southern Nevada has endured, oh my God, I have only 39 seconds. This is incredible. This is really not fair. But I will be happy to send in my comments to you guys. I'm just really flabbergasted that anyone could think of putting so many large-scale industrial farms when these things are practically obsolete as it stands, with microgrids that are now being produced by Tesla and Siemens, which offer a better opportunity for a less of an ecological impact. So I just, in 3 seconds, I just want to say good night. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. We will let people speak again if there's enough time. Charlene Ortiz. Is Charlene here? Can you raise your hand? And then Joni Holly. Your hand is raised. Please unmute yourself.
Hi. I just wanted to go on record that I am completely opposed to these solar farms and the invasion of our community and our resources. I'm going to just go through a list real fast. I know they talked about it before. Water, water, water. We don't have any. We can't afford for 8, 9, 10 projects to go into our community and drain our water. I also found it very convenient that we were downgrading the VRM from a 3 to a 4. And in reality, it's going to turn our area into an industrial dump. I mean, that's what people are going to see. I also learned that Candela, the company that's in charge of this project, is the one that was paying for the wildlife surveys to be done. That just to me seems like a conflict of interest, and the fact that in the report there were no kit fox. I just can't really believe that. Let's see. I retired and worked my whole life, and I could have moved anywhere in the United States. And 2 years ago, I chose to come here because of the climate and because of the property that we chose was surrounded by BLM. And had I known that there were going to be 10 or 12 solar projects going in this community, and surrounding us with 28 or 30,000 acres of solar panels, I probably would have chosen a different place in the United States. So I plead with you to not move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak who did not pre-register? If so, could you please raise your hand and we will unmute you in the order that you raise it. Seeing no hands, is there anybody who has already spoken who would like to speak again? We'll have one more opportunity for anybody who has already spoken. Carl, looks like your hand is raised, so we'll unmute you.
So finishing up where I left off, the only reason that CO2 emissions may drop in countries installing rebuildable extractive energy and electric vehicles is because they outsource the mining and manufacture of these machines to other countries, thus increasing the CO2 emissions in those countries. BLM should take this into consideration when measuring CO2 emissions. Rebuildable, extractable energy capturing devices are not clean except through greenwashing and are only making our predicament worse. In fact, the trillions of government subsidies given this sector only makes the rich richer. The Inflation Reduction Act should be appropriately called the fourth industrial revolution. This is a government redistribution of wealth from the working class to corporations and wealthy financial class, which are also principally fossil fuel companies. And ultimately, any money that is offered by them as payouts for grants, agreements, promotions, or mitigation will come from utility ratepayers. This is a scam that is not financially feasible without trillions in government subsidies. This is what their balance sheet looks like. What is done to the environment is even worse. So wildlife and solar panels are an uncomfortable mix. Birds can be made short work of if unlucky enough to collide with them thinking they're water. But direct mortality is only a part of the story. The building process is a kind of war zone. The noise, devastation, are disasters for fragile ecosystem habitats. If solar panels are to be built, they are better sited on rooftops where electricity is needed. Life cannot exist if the balanced ecological environment is destroyed. This project is doomed to failure in more ways than one. True resilience and sustainability comes from thinking globally and acting locally.
Sorry, Carl, to interrupt you again, but we have used the next 2 minutes and we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to continue speaking. I would encourage you to submit all your comments in writing as well. It looks like Michael Fender has his hand up. You can unmute yourself.
I sure do. I sure do. I'd like to interject with this. Living here in Pahrump, it's been quite an interesting feat, and I've seen a lot of things, and I've met a lot of people in the time that I have lived here. And what I have learned is that Pahrump in itself is in the last since in the last 15 years, it has more doubled in population. Right now, it's running at over 40,000. The county's at 50,000. They have a plan to, the commissioners and their planning commission have a really good plan to increase the size of the community. They have a lot of things planned. In so doing, they know they need water for this. So, and here again, I don't want to bring up the water issue so much because other people have compounded this. So the water here is the most important thing for this town and this valley to succeed. It has done quite well. It has survived. They have a great plan. They have some different housing plans planned. They have fairground plan. They have different businesses that want to come in here. Why? Because we're the back door to Death Valley. Literally the back door. And I'm sure if you living here and you've probably been gone up Bella Vista and taken the back way in through the Valley Junction. So you can understand the importance here. We are also the bedroom community for Las Vegas because housing here is a little bit less than what it is there. And because of that, they've increased the size of Highway 160. So it's important. These things are going to hurt us. I don't care what Clark County's got to say, but they are actually going to hurt our building of Pahrump and Pahrump Valley. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael. Kevin Emmerich, you have your hand up. Should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello again, it's Kevin Emmerich. My group's actually Basin and Range Watch. I want to discuss land use plans. So you're amending the Las Vegas Resource Management Plan, which was last updated in 1997, 98, about 27 years ago. Things have changed. For example, there's a lot more people living in Nevada. There's a lot more people visiting Death Valley National Park. And there are a lot more people living in that area in southern Pahrump that's going to be impacted by these projects. Will you wait until that plan is updated to approve these projects and move forward? If you would, that would be the sane way to do it, because if you haven't noticed by now, everybody but the solar developers opposes these projects. Waiting for that plan to be updated would be fair. It would allow US citizens, people who own public lands, to chime in and say how the Pahrump Valley resources should be managed. Instead, we're just pushing this forward in a way to get around or avoid your own regulations and land use plan. Another one is that big monstrous Western solar plan that's being updated. If you would just wait on this, you could allow us to introduce alternatives that would designate this area as a solar exclusion zone. And you know what? That would make all of the people happy. These are the people that the Bureau of Land Management works for. You don't work for the industry, you work for everybody. Please remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, Tony, I see you raised your hand again. You should be able to unmute.
Thank you. That's most sportsmanlike of you. So one of the things I wanted to say is that Southern Nevada has endured about 1,000 nuclear explosions. We store nuclear waste at Yucca Mountain. We transport it through the center of Pahrump on trucks. We host air forces from around the world, and we cheer them on as they fly over us at 100 feet. We've done our part to strengthen the nation, but enough is enough. Please leave us alone. Let us enjoy the natural habitat that brought us here. Don't pave the desert with a sea of silicon. The industrial solar scale farms that you're proposing are already obsolete, and I kind of touched on that before. It just seems like it would make a lot more sense for the companies involved to approach microgrids, with the intention of putting them right in Las Vegas. They're deployed normally on homes, parking lots, office buildings. It might actually, depending on how the economics work out, you could actually make it cheaper than doing a large scale industrial solar farm that, is using water essentially that we really don't have. So I don't want to monopolize the time, but that was the rest of what I wanted to say during the my 2 minutes. Thank you very much for letting me say that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak a second time or who has not spoken and would like to? Okay. Well, we really want to thank everybody for all of the comments that they provided and all of the really good questions. We want to make sure to provide all of the information on how to submit further comments. And we really encourage everybody to provide additional comments in writing or the comments that they gave during this presentation as well, if they would like to provide any additional detail. The public review and comment period closes April 11th. And now I'm going to hand the presentation over to Bruce Silito to do a brief closeout. We will, however, just a reminder, be here until 8. So if anybody decides they want to speak, we'll be here and listening.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone, for attending the public meeting for the Ruffat-Clark Solar Project. It was a good meeting. I sat here and listened to comments and questions and answers that were provided. It was definitely enlightening. I appreciate it, and your comments will definitely be put into the public record and addressed. So just remember, though, that your comments can be submitted all the way through this public comment period. I believe we were told that April 11th is the deadline for this, for your comments. And again, thank you for your time and have a great rest of your evening.
As I mentioned previously, we are here until 8. If anybody wants to speak a second time or would like to speak for the first time, please feel free to raise your hand. Hello, just a reminder that if anybody would like to speak, they're able to raise their hand and we can unmute you. Hi, Joyce. I see that you are on. Let me unmute you so you can speak. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I believe I did.
Yes.
Can you, okay, Joyce Barishman, and I'm sorry I'm joining late tonight. I was at the meeting the other night at the Nugget, and I thought it was a very good meeting, and all the personnel was very helpful at the meeting, especially Bruce was very helpful, and he seemed very concerned about what we're going through here in Pahrump with the lack of water and the possibility of the solar farms being approved for their leases and being built. And today I did read something in the newspaper in California that people that lived in the area of the solar farm, their wells are going dry. And that's not a good sign. We certainly don't want that to happen in Pahrump. And with the solar farms, they have to have water to operate, and of course, it would come from our water district. So we do not see how that could benefit Nye County at all. It's a real problem for us. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining on.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Certainly.
I want to thank Beth. Beth was very, very nice and helpful at the meeting, and I didn't get to make that comment. She's a very nice lady, and I want to thank her. Thank you, Beth. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Joyce. We'll be here till 8, and we were giving everybody 2 opportunities to speak. So if you wanted to speak again, there's still 10 minutes to do so.
Okay, I'll listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Just to be clear, there were no other attendees right now. So we'll just be available in case you wanted to speak again.